The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with barely contained laughter. Hundreds of alien representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to witness Earth's latest announcement, but none of them could take it seriously. On the massive holographic display floating in the center of the hall, Captain James Walker stood proud and tall next to Earth's newest creation, the Archimedes. As humanity's first seventh-dimensional vessel, Walker's voice echoed through the chamber. The Archimedes represents a breakthrough in dimensional engineering. We believe this technology will revolutionize space travel as we know it. The laughter, which had been simmering beneath the surface, finally broke free. It started with a few snickers from the blue-skinned delegates in the front row and quickly spread throughout the chamber like a wave. Even the usually stoic council leaders couldn't maintain their composure. High Counselor Reed, a tall being with crystalline features, raised a hand to quiet the chamber. "Captain Walker," he spoke, his voice dripping with condescension, "while we appreciate Earth's enthusiasm, surely you must understand that achieving true seventh-dimensional travel is beyond your species' current technological capabilities. Most advanced civilizations here took thousands of years just to master 4D space." Walker's face remained calm, though a slight smile played at the corners of his mouth. "With all due respect, High Counselor, we believe we found a different approach." "Different?" Another council member scoffed. "Your species barely managed faster than light travel a century ago. Now you claim to have leapfrogged over thousands of years of necessary development." In the back of the chamber, Dr. Gray, the council's lead scientist, watched the proceedings with more interest than amusement. Unlike his colleagues, he had noticed something peculiar in the design specifications Earth had submitted. The equations didn't follow any conventional patterns. They were strange, almost artistic in their approach. The hologram shifted, showing the Archimedes in greater detail. The ship looked unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of the sleek, pointed designs favored by most species, it had an unusual geometric pattern that seemed to repeat and fold in on itself in impossible ways. Parts of the ship appeared to exist in spaces that shouldn't have been there. "As you can see," Walker continued, undeterred by the mockery, "the Archimedes utilizes a completely new framework for understanding dimensional space. We call it the Mobius architecture." Another wave of laughter swept through the chamber. A delegate from the Advanced Spiral Arm Alliance stood up, their multiple appendages waving in amusement. "You named your groundbreaking technology after a simple three-dimensional shape. How charmingly primitive." Dr. Gray leaned forward in his seat, his eyes narrowing. The humans were using old, basic mathematical concepts, but they were applying them in ways he'd never considered. It was like they were building a skyscraper with children's blocks. It shouldn't work, but somehow the design held together. "We understand your skepticism," Walker acknowledged, "but we invite any of your scientists to examine our work. The Archimedes will be conducting its first public demonstration next week. We welcome all observers." High Counselor Reed shook his head, crystal fragments of light dancing across the chamber. "Captain Walker, while we appreciate the entertainment value of this presentation, the Council has more pressing matters to attend to. Perhaps when humanity has advanced enough to understand true dimensional mechanics, we can revisit this discussion." As the chamber began to empty, filled with amused chatter and dismissive comments, Dr. Gray remained in his seat. He pulled up the human design specifications on his personal terminal, studying the equations that everyone else had dismissed. There was something here, something that defied conventional wisdom. While the rest of the galaxy laughed at humanity's presumption, Gray couldn't shake the feeling that they had all missed something important. The humans had approached the problem like beginners, questioning basic assumptions that more advanced civilizations had taken for granted for millennia. As he stared at the strange equations, a troubling thought crossed his mind. What if that was exactly why they had succeeded where others had failed? 1 week after the announcement, thousands of ships surrounded the testing area in deep space. The gathered vessels represented every major civilization in the galaxy, their crews eager to witness what most expected to be a spectacular failure. The Archimedes floated at the center of this vast audience, its unusual geometric patterns catching and reflecting starlight in ways that seemed to bend reality. All observation vessels, please maintain your current distance, Captain Walker's voice transmitted across all channels. The demonstration will begin in 5 minutes. In his private observation ship, Dr. Gray watched with growing interest. He had spent the past week studying the human equations, and while he still couldn't fully understand them, he knew something extraordinary was about to happen. "Look at their primitive vessel," a voice crackled over the general channel. "They've barely managed to make it hold together in normal space." High Counselor Reed's magnificent ship hung at the front of the observation fleet. "Let them proceed," he announced. "Let this serve as a lesson in humility for future generations." Inside the Archimedes, Captain Walker stood on the bridge with his crew. "All systems ready?" he asked, looking at his team. "Engineering reports all systems green," his first officer replied. 7D drive is warming up exactly as expected." Walker nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Let's show them what humanity can do." Begin the demonstration sequence. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Archimedes just floated in space, its unusual hull patterns shifting slightly in the starlight. Then, observers noticed something strange. The ship appeared to be in 2 places at once. "What kind of holographic trickery is this?" someone demanded over the common channel. But Dr. Gray knew better. His instruments showed no signs of holographic projection. The Archimedes truly existed in multiple locations simultaneously, something that should have been impossible. The demonstration continued. The ship now appeared in 4 places, then 8, then 16, each version as solid and real as the original. Sensor readings from across the observation fleet went crazy, showing impossible data that made senior scientists shake their heads in disbelief. "Attention all observers," Walker's calm voice cut through the chaos. "We will now demonstrate practical applications of 7D travel." In an instant, all copies of the Archimedes vanished. The original ship appeared to fold in on itself, disappearing into a point that shouldn't have existed. Before anyone could react, it reappeared behind the entire observation fleet, then above it, then below it, each movement happening faster than any known form of propulsion should allow. "Impossible," High Counselor Reed whispered, his crystalline features reflecting the light of the impossible demonstrations before him. "They're breaking every known law of physics." But they weren't breaking the laws of physics. They were using them in ways no one had imagined possible. The Archimedes began to move through space in ways that made senior scientists question their sanity. It didn't just move up or down, left or right, forward or backward. It moved in directions that had no names in any known language. Dr. Gray's instruments captured everything. The humans weren't using any kind of tricks or illusions. They had genuinely achieved something that the most advanced civilizations had deemed impossible. His hand shook as he analyzed the data. The humans had done it. They had actually built a working 7D vessel. "Final demonstration," Walker announced. The Archimedes suddenly appeared in the center of the observation fleet again. "We will now show the practical applications of 7D technology for everyday space travel." The ship began to glow with a soft blue light. Then, reality itself seemed to bend around it. When the light faded, the Archimedes had created what appeared to be a stable pathway through space, a corridor that somehow existed in more dimensions than anyone could see. "What we have created," Walker explained to the now silent audience, "is a stable 7D corridor. Through this pathway, a journey of 1,000 light years can be completed in minutes, without the dangers of traditional faster-than-light travel." The laughter that had filled the Galactic Council chamber a week ago was now replaced by stunned silence. In just a few minutes, humanity had proven that they weren't just playing with forces beyond their comprehension. They had mastered them. High Counselor Reed's voice, when it finally came, had lost all its previous condescension. "Captain Walker," he said slowly, "I believe the Galactic Council would like to schedule an emergency session to discuss this development in detail." 3 days after the demonstration, Alarms blared across every ship in the Centauri sector. A massive quantum anomaly had appeared without warning, tearing apart the fabric of space itself. The phenomenon glowed with an eerie purple light, growing larger with each passing minute. In the emergency session of the Galactic Council, panic filled the great hall that had so recently echoed with laughter at humanity's expense. "The anomaly is consuming everything in its path," reported the commander of the Spiral Arm Fleet, his hologram flickering with interference. "3 populated systems have already been evacuated. Nothing we do seems to affect it." High Counselor Reed's crystalline form reflected the red emergency lights as he turned to Dr. Gray. "What are we dealing with?" "It's a quantum cascade failure," Dr. Gray explained, his voice grave. "The anomaly is breaking down the barriers between dimensions. If we don't stop it, it will continue to grow until it consumes the entire sector, possibly the galaxy itself." The Council's most advanced ships had already attempted to contain the anomaly. The sleek vessels of the Spiral Arm Alliance, famous for their 4D technology, had tried to create a containment field. They had failed. The proud warships of the Crystal Confederation had unleashed their most powerful weapons. The anomaly had simply absorbed the energy and grown stronger. "Our best theories suggest we need at least 6 hours to calculate a solution," one of the senior scientists announced. "The anomaly will reach the Proxima colonies in 4. The chamber fell silent. 2 million people lived in those colonies. "Perhaps," Dr. Gray said slowly, "we're approaching this the wrong way." He turned to face the Council. "We've been trying to solve this using conventional methods. But there's nothing conventional about this crisis." All eyes turned to the back of the chamber, where Captain Walker stood quietly with his crew. They had been invited to the emergency session as a courtesy after their demonstration, but no one had expected them to contribute. "The Archimedes," Dr. Gray continued, "operates in ways we still don't fully understand. Its 7D drive might be able to interact with the anomaly in ways our technology cannot." High Counselor Reed's crystal features hardened. "You want us to trust the fate of 2 million people to an untested human vessel?" "With respect, Counselor," Walker stepped forward, "the Archimedes is far from untested. We've spent years perfecting this technology. We just didn't feel the need to brag about it until it was ready." The chamber erupted in angry mutters. The idea that humans had been secretly developing such advanced technology for years was almost as shocking as the crisis itself. "How would you even approach this?" demanded one of the Council scientists. "The mathematical complexity of the anomaly is beyond." "Sometimes the simplest solution is the best," Walker interrupted, pulling up a holographic display. "The anomaly is complex because it exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. But that's exactly what the Archimedes was designed to handle." He manipulated the display, showing a simulation of his plan. The Council members watched in silence as the simple yet elegant solution unfolded before them. "It's impossible," someone whispered. "That's what you said about our ship," Walker replied calmly. "We can reach the anomaly in 2 hours. The choice is yours." High Counselor Reed looked around the chamber, seeing the fear in his fellow Council members' eyes. Their most advanced civilizations had failed. Their greatest technologies had proven useless. And now their only hope lay with the species they had laughed at just days ago. "The Proxima colonies have been our people's home for 10,000 years, Reed said finally. "Captain Walker, can you save them?" Walker's face showed no pride, no satisfaction at their predicament. Only determination. "We can try. But we'll need full access to all your sensor data and complete operational freedom. No interference, no matter how strange things might look." Reed nodded slowly. "Granted. And, Captain." "Yes, Counselor." "Good luck. It seems we may have underestimated humanity in more ways than one." As Walker and his crew rushed back to the Archimedes, Dr. Gray watched them go. He couldn't help but wonder if humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology at all, but their willingness to try the impossible. The Archimedes raced through space toward the quantum anomaly, its unusual hull patterns shifting and glowing as it moved. On the bridge, Dr. Tom Reynolds, the ship's chief scientist, prepared to explain their technology to the gathered alien observers watching through holographic feeds. "You see," Reynolds began, his hands moving across the holographic display. Everyone else approached dimensional science from the top down. They started with complex mathematics and tried to force reality to fit their equations. The display showed traditional alien calculations, beautiful in their complexity but rigid in their structure. "We humans did something different," he continued. "We started with simple shapes, basic patterns that even children could understand. Like this." He drew a simple line on the display. "In a single dimension, this line is all that exists." But he folded the line, making it bend in a way that seemed to break the rules of space. The alien scientists watching gasped as they began to understand. "We learned about dimensions from paper crafts," Reynolds explained. "From the way children fold paper to make birds and boats. From the way artists transform flat surfaces into the illusion of depth. Our understanding didn't come from advanced mathematics first, it came from play." Dr. Gray, watching from his ship, leaned forward with growing excitement. "You approached multidimensional physics like children learning to draw." "Exactly." Reynolds smiled. "Think about human art. When a child draws a tree, they're taking something three-dimensional and making it work in 2 dimensions. When we create music, we're expressing time as sound. Everything humans create is about translating between dimensions." He pulled up new images, cave paintings, Renaissance art, modern abstract sculptures, musical scores, and dance notations. "Our entire history of art and music has been practiced for understanding higher dimensions. We didn't know it, but every time a human created art, they were learning to think beyond normal space." A holographic display filled with simple patterns that began to fold and transform in impossible ways. "The mathematics we used isn't actually simple. It's just built from simple pieces, like a child stacking blocks to build a castle." Walker stepped forward. "That's why our ship looks different from yours. We didn't try to master higher dimensions. We learned to play with them first. The Archimedes isn't just a ship. It's a work of art that happens to travel through 7 dimensions." The alien scientists watched in stunned silence as Reynolds demonstrated how human music had helped them understand dimensional harmonics. He showed how dance movements had taught them about moving through impossible spaces, and how children's origami had revealed secrets about folding space itself. "Your civilizations mastered 4-dimensional space through pure mathematics," Reynolds explained. "But you never learned to see it, to feel it, to play with it. You built incredible technologies, but you never learned to dance with reality itself." He showed them a video of children making soap bubbles. "Look at how naturally these bubbles form complex mathematical shapes. Nature plays with dimensions all the time. We just had to learn to play along." Dr. Gray's voice came through, filled with wonder. "All this time, we thought you were behind us in science, but you were approaching it from such a different direction that we couldn't even recognize what you were doing. The real breakthrough," Reynolds continued, "came when we stopped trying to force space to follow our rules. Instead, we learned to follow its rules, like a dancer following music." He pulled up the ship's core designs. "Every part of the Archimedes is built on patterns we found in nature, in art, in music. The 7th dimension isn't just a mathematical concept to us. It's a space we've been playing in since our species first made cave paintings." As he finished explaining, the quantum anomaly came into view on their main screen. Its purple light twisted in ways that hurt the eyes, breaking reality itself. "And now," Walker said quietly, "we're going to use everything we've learned about playing with dimensions to fix that tear in space. Not by forcing it closed, but by teaching it to fold itself shut, like a piece of cosmic origami." The alien observers finally understood. They hadn't been watching humanity catch up to their level of science. They had been watching humanity create an entirely new way of understanding reality itself. The Archimedes hung in space before the massive quantum anomaly, looking impossibly small against the swirling purple chaos that threatened to devour entire star systems. Inside the ship, Captain Walker took a deep breath as he looked at his crew. "Start the dimensional shift," he ordered. "Take us in slowly." The ship's unusual geometric patterns began to pulse with soft blue light. As the 7D drive activated, reality around the Archimedes started to bend in ways that made the observing alien fleet's sensors go crazy. "First dimensional shift complete," Reynolds reported from his station. "We're now operating in fourth dimensional space." He paused, checking his readings. "Fifth dimension opening up. Now." The crew felt strange sensations as their ship moved beyond normal spacetime. Colors they had never seen before filled the bridge. Sounds took on shapes. Time itself seemed to flow like water around them. "This is impossible," one of the alien scientists watching through their feeds whispered. Their bodies should be breaking down at this level of dimensional shift. But the human crew remained calm, almost as if they had expected these impossible sensations. Walker smiled slightly, remembering their training. "Just like in the simulations," he said. "Remember your art training. Don't fight the new perspectives. Flow with them." The crew had spent months preparing for this moment, not with complex mathematical formulas, but with art, music, and dance. They had learned to perceive reality in new ways, just as their ancestors had learned to turn three-dimensional worlds into two-dimensional paintings. "Sixth dimension engaging," Reynolds announced. The ship's hull now seemed to exist in multiple places at once, each version equally real. "Seventh dimension in 3, 2, 1. Reality exploded into patterns that no language could describe. The crew saw their own bodies existing across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Each person on the bridge existed in 7 different ways at once, all of them equally true. "It's beautiful," the first officer whispered, watching as time itself became visible as spiraling patterns of light. Walker focused on their mission. "Take us into the anomaly. Remember, we're not fighting it. We're teaching it to dance." The Archimedes moved forward, its 7-dimensional form interacting with the quantum tear in ways that the observing alien ship's sensors couldn't even detect. Where their most advanced ships had tried to force the anomaly closed with brute force, the Archimedes began a subtle dimensional dance. "Starting the fold sequence," Reynolds said. His hands moved across his console in practiced patterns, like a musician playing an instrument. Just like paper origami, but with space itself. The anomaly's chaotic energy began to respond. Where it had absorbed and grown stronger from alien weapons, it now seemed to resonate with the Archimedes' gentle manipulations. Purple chaos began to fold in on itself, following patterns that humans had first learned by making paper cranes. "It's working." Dr. Gray's voice came through their comms, filled with awe. "The anomaly's energy readings are decreasing. But how are your crews surviving this level of dimensional exposure?" Walker watched as his crew worked, each person moving in perfect harmony with the impossible spaces around them. "We're not just surviving it, Doctor. We're living it. This is what humans were meant to do, to see the art in chaos, to find the music in mathematics." The anomaly continued to fold, its destructive energy gradually transforming into harmless patterns. The human crew existed in 7 dimensions at once. Their consciousness expanded beyond anything their ancestors could have imagined. Yet they remained fundamentally human, their art and creativity now expressed across all of reality. "Final fold sequence initiating," Reynolds announced. The Archimedes pulsed with bright blue light, its geometric patterns now moving in perfect harmony with the folding space around it. In that moment, as humanity danced through 7 dimensions to save millions of lives, the watching alien civilizations finally understood. Humans hadn't built the Archimedes by following in their technological footsteps. They had found their own path, turning the greatest forces in the universe into art. And in doing so, they had achieved something that no amount of advanced technology could match. They had learned to make the universe itself dance with them. As the Archimedes emerged from its 7-dimensional dance, the quantum anomaly collapsed in on itself, leaving behind nothing but normal, peaceful space. The crew gradually shifted back into regular three-dimensional existence, their minds still buzzing with the memory of experiencing all 7 dimensions at once. The silence across all communication channels lasted for exactly 32 seconds. Then the cheers began. They did it. Dr. Gray's voice boomed across the channels. The anomaly is completely gone. No residual energy, no dimensional tears, nothing. They didn't just contain it. They transformed it. In the Galactic Council's emergency chamber, High Counselor Reed stood in stunned silence. The massive displays showed the Archimedes floating peacefully where the deadly anomaly had been just minutes before. His crystalline features reflected the light of 1,000 different sensor readings, all confirming the same impossible truth. "Get them in here," he ordered finally. Now, 20 minutes later, Captain Walker and his crew stood before the full Galactic Council. This time, there was no laughter, no mockery, only intense attention as Dr. Gray presented his findings. "The data is conclusive," Gray announced, his voice filled with excitement. "The humans didn't just stop the anomaly. They did something we thought was impossible. They used their 7-dimensional capability to literally reshape space itself." He pulled up complex readings that showed the Archimedes' actions, while our ships tried to fight the anomaly with force. He paused, shaking his head in wonder. "They taught it how to heal itself." "Taught it?" one of the council members asked, confused. Walker stepped forward. "Everything in the universe follows patterns," he explained. "Even chaos has its own kind of order. We didn't try to impose our will on the anomaly. We showed it how to find its natural balance again." The council chamber erupted in discussion. Species that had spent millennia developing their technology couldn't quite grasp how humans had succeeded where they had failed. "But your technology is so basic," one of the senior scientists protested. "You barely have any quantum computing capability. Your neural interfaces are primitive. How did you even calculate the dimensional variables?" Reynolds smiled. "We didn't calculate them. We felt them." He gestured to the human crew. "Every one of us spent years training our minds to perceive multiple dimensions naturally. Art, music, dance, these weren't just hobbies for us. They were our way of understanding reality itself." Dr. Gray stepped forward eagerly. "Don't you see? While we were building more and more complex technology, they were developing their consciousness to naturally comprehend higher dimensions. Their primitive approach gave them an advantage we never considered." High Counselor Reed raised his hand for silence. When he spoke, his voice carried a new tone of respect. "Captain Walker, Dr. Reynolds, crew of the Archimedes, the Galactic Council owes you a debt that can never be repaid. You saved millions of lives today." He paused, his crystalline form shifting in what appeared to be discomfort. "We also owe you an apology. We dismissed your achievements without understanding them. We mistook different for primitive. That was our failure, not yours." Walker nodded in acceptance, but Reynolds spoke up. "Actually, Counselor, being seen as primitive might have been our greatest advantage. It meant we had to think differently, find our own path. Sometimes the best way forward isn't the most advanced one. It's the most creative one." Around the chamber, heads nodded in understanding. The various species began to see their own advanced technology in a new light. Perhaps they had become too dependent on complexity, too convinced that progress only moved in one direction. "The Galactic Council formally requests," Reed announced, "that Earth consider sharing its dimensional technology with the galaxy. Not just the engineering, but the entire approach. We need to learn what you know." Walker smiled. "We would be honored. But I should warn you, first class might involve finger painting." The chamber filled with laughter again, but this time it was different. This wasn't the mocking laughter of superiority. It was the joyful sound of minds opening to new possibilities, of advanced beings realizing that sometimes the simplest answers were the most profound. And somewhere in that laughter was the sound of the galaxy changing forever. 3 months after the quantum anomaly incident, the Great Hall of the Galactic Council looked very different. Where once advanced aliens had sat in rigid rows discussing complex theories, now they sat in circles on the floor, folding paper into intricate shapes. Dr. Gray watched with amazement as Reynolds guided a group of the galaxy's most brilliant scientists through a simple origami exercise. "Remember," Reynolds said, holding up his paper crane, "it's not about forcing the paper, it's about understanding how it wants to fold." In another corner of the hall, Captain Walker stood with High Counselor Reed, watching several screens showing similar scenes playing out across the galaxy. On one screen, human artists taught alien engineers how to paint. On another, alien scientists learned Earth dances, their bodies moving in ways that helped them understand dimensional movement. "I still can't quite believe it," Reed said, his crystalline form catching the light. "In just 3 months, your teaching methods have advanced our understanding of dimensional physics more than our traditional approaches did in 1,000 years." Walker smiled. "Sometimes the best way to learn isn't to study something, it's to play with it." He gestured to where a group of alien children were creating art alongside their parents. "Look at them. They're not just learning about dimensions, they're experiencing them naturally." The changes went far beyond just science. Alien architecture had begun to incorporate artistic elements inspired by human designs. Music from Earth was being studied not just as entertainment, but as a way to understand temporal physics. Even alien fashion had started to reflect the new understanding of dimensional patterns. Dr. Gray approached them, holding his own completed paper crane. "The latest results from the Dimensional Research Institute are in," he announced excitedly. "Using the human methodology, we've already developed 3 new forms of space travel. They're simpler than our old methods, more efficient, and," he paused, looking at his crane, "more beautiful." "Beauty and function are often the same thing," Walker replied. "The universe itself is a work of art. We just had to learn to see it that way." Across the room, Reynolds was now teaching a group about human music. The alien scientists watched in fascination as he explained how a simple melody could help them understand the flow of time itself. One of them, a being of pure energy, had actually managed to modulate their frequency to match the musical notes. "What I find most remarkable," Reed said, "is how your methods work for everyone, regardless of their species or level of technological advancement. It's truly universal." Walker nodded. "That's because we didn't invent these principles. We discovered them. They were always there, in every piece of art, every song, every dance. We just had to recognize their importance." A young alien child approached them, holding up a drawing that seemed to bend in impossible ways. "Look," she said proudly, "I drew a 5th-dimensional flower." Walker knelt down to examine the drawing. "You certainly did," he said warmly. "And it's perfect." The child beamed and ran back to her friends, who were all creating their own multi-dimensional art. "That's the real breakthrough," Dr. Gray observed. "Not just that humans found a new way to understand dimensions, but that you found a way to share that understanding with everyone, even children." Reed's crystalline form shifted in what had become his version of a nod. "The galaxy laughed when you first showed us your ship. Now we laugh with joy as we learn what you always knew, that the greatest scientific achievements come not from complexity, but from understanding simplicity deeply." As the day's lessons wound down, Walker stood at the center of the hall. Around him, beings from across the galaxy were sharing their artwork, their songs, their dances, each one a step toward understanding the true nature of reality. "You know what the best part is?" he said to no one in particular. "We're just getting started. There's so much more to explore, so many more dimensions to dance through." And in that moment, as art and science merged across the galaxy, as ancient civilizations learned to see the universe through new eyes, everyone understood a fundamental truth. The path to the stars wasn't just through technology, but through the simple joy of creative discovery. The laughter that once mocked humanity had transformed into the music of a galaxy learning to dance among the dimensions.